Okay.
So is my position okay?
Yeah.
However you're comfortable,
Very
yeah.
comfortable. I have you here.
Man, this is his show, Just Rain show. I gotta be.
You are perfect here right now.
This is your show today. It's just two boys. You're half of the. You're one boy.
I'm a man.
I know, but today you're a boy. There's a lot of people that might not know who you are on this podcast, so if you can give a quick introduction. Besides an author, besides an avid historian, and besides someone who really likes Pakistan, who are you?
I'm a man who's just trying to find who I am because
Wow.
I've done a lot of things in life.
Incredible. Okay.
So I have spent 25 years in the corporate world, and my last role, 21 years of that was with American Express. And I worked in Asia, Hong Kong, Singapore. I was born in India. I'm an engineer with an MBA from University of Chicago, and I was the revenue management head of American Express for Asia Pacific region. Historian, I am not.
So you left all of that behind.
Yeah,
You
I
said,
just had,
you know
I
what?
had calling, yeah.
Screw all these high-paying jobs and this established career that I have going on.
No, I don't.
Let me go to Pakistan and write a couple books.
No, I don't think it's as simple as screw
Okay,
off.
all right. So how did that happen then?
It happened because some energy was moving me in that direction.
Ooh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Sometimes you don't know you're in a tunnel, and
Yeah.
that tunnel just kind of keeps evolving, and you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Uh-huh.
But there's a broader reason sometimes, and I
Right.
call myself as an accidental author.
Interesting.
I never dreamt I would write a book, but now we've got two books that I've written. And
You
both
have
are-
two books. So this is your first book,
Yep.
Lost Heritage: The Sikh Legacy in Pakistan.
And-
Now this is interesting to me because I'll discuss that a little bit later on. But you also have
Yeah, this one's just come out. It's a continuation called
Yes.
The Quest Continues, Lost Heritage, the Sikh Legacy in Pakistan. So essentially, it's two books now
Right.
we've got on the same subject, which is just a continuation.
yeah.
Yeah, so for me, it was, I never thought I would write books. And now when I look back, some kind of a strange energy was working to move me towards this direction. I started reading history at 17 years.
Okay.
I started slowly graduating towards spirituality, and then while I was doing my corporate career, and then I picked up photography, started writing for magazines, my travels, and so somehow these skills were just adding up.
Okay.
And in 2014, because of certain personal reasons, when my job was moving me to Australia, I decided not to go, and I just took a back seat and I just stepped out. My health was a bit down. I'd worked for 25 years, so I just thought I'll relax for 6 months and then look for another job. But now when I look back, actually God was preparing me for that day for 25 to 30 years. And when that moment came by, I thought, let me go to Pakistan. Now, I don't know if you know, because you've called me onto your stage.
Yeah.
You called me onto your show.
Yeah.
But I'm not too sure if you know that we have a common linkage here. I mean, we have common...
I heard. Yeah.
So your grandfather
Yeah.
and my father are from the same village.
Wow. And what village is that?
I would ask you, tell me what village is
See,
your
this is why I brought you
grandfather.
on to this podcast.
Muzaffarabad and Kashmir.
Muzaffarabad.
The area which went into Pakistan and what I call today as Pakistan administered Kashmir, where there's a huge massacre that happened in the tribal invasion after the 1947 partition of India, in which Punjab got divided, Bengal got divided. 10 million people moved, 1 million people died in that movement across all three communities, Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs.
Yeah.
But Kashmir was not decided to be divided, and the decision when British left was left to the King of Kashmir, and he would decide. But on 21st of October, 1947, this is a few months, 2.5 months after the partition of India and partition of Punjab, a tribal invasion of Muzaffarabad happens in Kashmir, in which a large Sikh population was basically perished in that attack. And the entire Sikh population actually migrated from there, Sikhs and Hindus. So our history starts from there. We have a
Yeah.
common lineage there.
Yeah.
For me, my father moved deep into Uttar Pradesh and UP. But, there's a study in US, it says the first generation after an exodus of this type, when it happens, whether it's Jewish Holocaust or any other Holocaust, first generation becomes quiet.
Yeah.
Second gets lost because nothing gets passed on. Third, there are some people actually who start asking questions. Now, the good thing I see in my father's case was, while they became quiet, they also talked. And I think the seeds got sowed in there. And also, though I'm technically a second generation, but the age gap is such that I consider myself in third generation. And I'm probably that, out of that study, is that small spark who's actually asked these questions. And when I left American Express in 2014, I just thought I'd need to go to Pakistan to explore our past and my father's place and my mother's place. That's all. That was a simple question. I never thought I'd write a book. But yes, I must admit, the bigger question that used to upset me, and it's something which happens out of a mass exodus, which happens as a shock, and communities when they move out and don't have an access to the lands where the history had churned, memories fade over a period of time. And that's what has happened with our community too, that when the British came into India, and they came in 1700s, mid 1700s, and they expanded and took over the whole of India, the last standing kingdom was the Sikh Kingdom, which was ruled out of Lahore, Ranjit Singh's kingdom.
Right.
And in 1849, after Second Anglo-Sikh War, that empire fell. But it stood as a mighty separate country for good about 50 years while the British were taking over the whole of India.
Right.
And then after 98 years after British, when they leave India, they decide to divide it on religious lines. And in that division, if you take that map, which was the Sikh Kingdom, which fell in 1849, and 1947, India and Pakistan is created, and you overlay it on that, what you find is that 80% of that territory now is in Pakistan. So the question that I'm posing is that when you ask my community today, be it that middle generation, the new generation, if you had to go to Pakistan, where would you want to go? And the answer is never more than the birthplace of Guru Nanak, which is Nankana Sahib, or 2 or 3 more Gurdwaras like Panja Sahib, Dera Sahib, Lahore, my father's place, and it stops there. So the question that I'm posing is, were my forefathers so incompetent that they only made these 3 or 4 Gurdwaras? The history says it was a mighty empire that churned, and it was a glorious chapter of the Sikh history.
Of course.
And yet today we only have a memory which is 3 or 4 Gurdwaras.
Yeah.
So then, when I went into Pakistan, what used to disturb me for years is I've read so much of history, and we've reduced a legacy into the realms of religion. You have Gurdwaras, you have temples.
So just so people are aware, like a lot of Sikh people, it's assumed that they all come from India, right? And I know, like anytime somebody asks me, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm Indian by heritage. So I just want to make that clear, just why people are like, why is he talking about Pakistan so much? And Sikhs meet from there. This is why, because it's generally considered that Sikh people or Punjabi people are from India, and not many people know that.
Well,
half of Punjab is technically in Pakistan as well. There's a lot of Sikh heritage.
More than half.
Yeah.
The most fertile part, in fact, Punjab, five rivers, Punjab, right? In fact, only 1.5 rivers flow in India.
Yeah.
And 3.5 flow that side, plus the Indus.
Interesting.
4.5 flow that side, because these 5 rivers go into the Indus River. So actually it's an Indus basin.
Right.
But 4.5 rivers flow in Pakistan, if you include Indus. And the most fertile part is that side. I've walked the farmlands out there. This Punjab in India was more of a desert land, which actually was converted after partition into a very high productive land because of the Sikh farmers who did their bit of after getting displaced from there. But going back to what we were talking about is, the bigger question to me is that legacy today in the minds of the community, which now is scattered. 1/3 of the Sikh community lives outside of India.
Right.
And one of the reasons is that 1947 dispersed them. So they moved from the Indus belt for a temporary moment into the Gangetic belt. They got dispersed, right? And from thereafter, the world is the stage for them. They just kept moving. So that's why you got 1/3 of the Sikh community living outside of the Indian subcontinent today. But whether it be the people living in India or in the countries abroad, or even if the small Sikh community that lives in Pakistan, you ask them what's your heritage, right? They can't speak more than Nankana Sahib, Panja Sahib, these 3 or 4 gurdwaras.
Wow.
So entire legacy in the minds of the people is reduced to a religion, and religion is not legacy.
Right.
Religion is a subset of a legacy.
Yeah.
Because legacy has many facets, and many of the facets include the military traditions, the art, architecture, interfaith aspects, the language. The communities that are left there, I mean, we've forgotten the non-turban wearing believers of Guru Nanak, more than 1 million people who are staying inside Pakistan. We've not held their hands. And they're kind of a culture which is canned, not actually in touch with the Hindu population, which actually these people who came from this belt, they were all believers of Nanak. And they went into Pakistan, into India, and they were all merged into a broader Hinduism. But in Pakistan, they're canned. They're not like you and me, a turban wearing Sikh, but there are 1 million people who believe in Guru Nanak.
Interesting. Which is probably, like, at that time, I think has a lot of that been erased as well, where like you said, like that's something that I didn't even know, that there was non-turban wearing believers in Guru Nanak. But
well, if I would go down to saying one more thing. I mean, I've got in my second book, which is this one, The Quest Continues, Lost Heritage, the Sikh Legacy in Pakistan.
yes.
In this one, I've gone in deep inside Sindh, Balochistan, and certain areas of Punjab where these communities are yet living, and I've dedicated a chapter on Nanak Panthis. The Panth is basically a community, believers of Nanak, not as we define today as Khalsa tradition, but the broader community. And this community actually is on the rise. I would say anywhere in the world, Sikhism is on the increase, because today we're defining Sikhism only as the visible out manifestations, right? That's how the world perceives it.
I agree,
So-
but I think that's also been, we've also enforced that as
That's
well.
right. That's what I'm saying. So the world is perceiving that because Nanak Panth was not just a Khalsa tradition. It had many traditions inside it. And as we have moved on in our history, we've defined who we are, and we define who you are. You exclude the others. But I'm not someone who can define for the others what their belief system is.
Right.
But as you've got a definition which the world perceives today, now you look at the people who are giving up their form. The dilemma is, are they Sikhs or not Sikhs? But then you look in Pakistan, there's a large kind of 1 million population who's sitting there who had never embraced the form, but they actually believe in the Granth Sahib. They believe in all the traditions. Their gurdwaras are opening up more and more. So who am I to tell you that? Then tell them that you are a Sikh or not a Sikh.
Right.
Their names are not Singhs and Kaurs.
Right.
So what I'm trying to come to is that these two works, though are anchored in, they started off from the tangible, a study of the tangible assets of the Sikh community, whether it be the military traditions, art, gurdwaras, the havelis, the residential places, the interfaith aspects. It covers all that. That's where it started from. But along the path, intangible aspects have become a very important aspect of the study, because tangibles, you can touch it. I can show you through visuals. Intangibles inside, the faith. And that is existing in Pakistan.
Right.
And Sikhism is on the rise in Pakistan, because the Nanakpanthi community is embracing Sikhism, Gurdwaras and so on and so forth. So I think that's where the importance of these two works come in. It's a journey across 126 cities and villages in Pakistan.
Why do you think it is on the rise? And is the culture in Pakistan accepting of that? Like, I guess the more Islamic culture of Pakistan.
I think the first and foremost, don't jump to conclusions by what the media tries to project. As I've gone
What do you
into
mean by
the
that?
as I've gone into the media space after my corporate career with these two books, I've moved around the world and I've had a lot of interactions with the media. One thing I find is, here's how the media guys will come in. They'll never come and hear my 1.5, 2 or 2.5 hour sessions that I'm talking about to understand the essence of what I'm trying to give.
Right.
After the session, they'll come to me running.
Right.
We need a 10-second bite. We need a 2-minute bite. Do you think I can reduce a 2.5 hour session into a 10-second bite or a 2-minute bite to satisfy your need? You are therefore going to report what you have already preconceived in your mind. I say the media people should come and sit down and hear what I'm trying to say and use your intelligence to take out the essence and project what one is trying to say out of these research. I've seldom found people doing that. They've already come with preconceived notions. Conditioning is something that a media man should always be aware of. So what I'm trying to say is that good and bad exists everywhere. In Toronto, do we not have good and bad in this city? I mean, they're coexisting, right? And I say that it exists in India, it exists in Pakistan, it exists in Toronto, it exists everywhere. So the spectrum is there. Minorities will always face challenges. It's not about Sikhs. be it
Right.
be it the
Absolutely.
Jews,
Yeah.
be it the any minority. I don't need to say any minority in the world will face a challenge.
Right.
Partition of the subcontinent is an outcome of minorities. A minority like the Muslim community voiced at that time, how will my rights be protected? It's an outcome of minority, right?
Right.
So minorities will be a threat everywhere.
Right.
And therefore they'll be challenged. So when the people have exited from the lands and left a small 14 to 15,000 turban-wearing Sikhs out there in Pakistan, and there's a large community of these Nanak Panthis who don't visibly look like Sikhs, they will face challenge because the masses will see them as a minority as well as elsewhere in the world. In spite of those challenges, there's more good than challenges.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
The society, I've lived with them. They are practicing their faiths. In Sindh and Balochistan itself, there are 200 gurdwaras which have opened as Sikh worship places. And I've got actually the pictures of that. Yes, Punjab got cleansed. Kashmir got cleansed. And because the community walked away, no one was there to take care of these places. And therefore, the heritage is under deterioration. But no one's consciously destroying it.
Right.
So that's the difference. Where in Sindh and Balochistan you go, people are living. They're practicing their faith.
Interesting.
There will be sporadic instances from any minority which will get blown up by the media and make it perceive as, okay, it's an attack on a non-Islamic faith and so on and so forth. We've got to be careful. People by and large are good. Communities are good.
Right.
People want to live with each other. So that's the fundamental on which you have to
I think people just are naturally, I think it's anywhere, people are just scared of something that they're not familiar with, and that happens to minorities.
That happens to any minority.
Right? Like African Americans in America. Like that documentary, Wild Wild Country. I mean, that's a good example. But I mean, any minority across anywhere. I mean, even in India, right? So are Sikh people? First of all, I didn't even know there was like 14,000, 15,000 in Pakistan. I think
15,000 turban-wearing Sikhs who are Pashtun Sikhs, not Punjabi Sikhs. They live along the Khyber area.
What does that mean? So for people that don't know what Pashtun means, what does that mean?
Okay, it's a good one. What does that mean? First and foremost, I'm going to give a slap to my community.
Okay.
Sikhism is not equal to Punjab. Today, the entire concept of Sikhism is equal to Punjab.
Yeah,
No,
I think that's the mainstream view of it. Yeah.
it's totally a concocted view. The Sikhs living in Afghanistan whose mother tongue is not Punjabi.
Yeah.
Faith has got nothing to do with the culture and region.
Right.
A Muslim in Indonesia is equally a Muslim, though his language, his culture is different then. But he believes in Quran. So why is it that for Sikhs, that Sikhs must be equal to Punjab?
Because Bhangra.
That's
Colors.
Someone told me that launch your book with getting a Bhangra guy to do something, right? I said, I'm not going to be crazy, right? To launch a serious book about lost heritage.
So wait, someone wanted you to have Bhangra dancers come out on the launch? Is that what
someone said you should do that and the book will be a success. I'm not interested.
Wow. You know what?
So ultimately, you have to do Bhangra, right? To get even a book to be perceived as as something, right? Anyhow, that's the state
It will bring some attention.
Yeah.
People love Bhangra. Everybody loves Bhangra, right?
So our history is not so much about Muzaffarabad. Our history is about, you see, we got to keep us as an individual below the broader objective of the society.
Right.
So I would not bring this show down to you and me in Muzaffarabad because the message is something bigger. So Muzaffarabad is just 4 to 5 pages.
What?
Of a 1,000 page, right? Yeah.
Were we not that popular?
Right. It's because I chose to project it that way.
You don't want to put your bias in?
No, because I actually did not go to write a book. As I said, I'm an accidental author. So when I went to Muzaffarabad, when I entered Pakistan after my corporate career, because my health was a bit down, I said, I want to go to Pakistan. My father's no more. I want to go to Muzaffarabad and I want to go and see some of the remains of the Sikh era. Where are they?
Yeah.
More than Nankana Sahib and Panja Sahib, where the whole community is stuck in terms of gurdwaras, right?
Right.
And as I went in, I landed in Pakistan, and you're talking about people, and people want to be good to each other. I came across beautiful people, excellent souls, and these two works are not because of Amardeep. Amardeep is just a medium through whom hundreds of people are speaking because they helped me. And the journey starts, and I go across, and my only objective that time was, I didn't go to write a book, the first book. My objective was to reach Muzaffarabad on the 15th day. And I'm talking about why the community needs to be bigger. I'm answering that. I reached Muzaffarabad and I reached that bridge where a lot of our family people were massacred on the 22nd October 1947. And we have a lot of personal stories in that. I'm sure your family will also have some personal stories in that, because that massacre that happened by the tribal invasion on 21st October 1947 was a gruesome, actually, one. It was nothing about Hindus and Sikhs, because I've read testimonies of even the Muslims inside the Muzaffarabad who were also equally victimized.
Interesting.
Right?
By who? Their own?
The tribal invasion. This is a political invasion.
Oh.
Which side should this region
So
go
everything
to?
we know is a lie, in some aspect.
I mean,
Because this is me all assuming that this was like a religious
they
conflict.
say
Purely.
no, it did start from a religious conflict,
Right. But purely a religious conflict.
but does not mean that others did not suffer. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right. I mean, yeah, I think everybody from both sides suffered, but I didn't know
Absolutely.
people,
But
Muslims suffered inside.
in Muzaffar, if you see the
That's
live
crazy.
testimonies of some of the books that have been written, when the tribals attacked, they did not even spare the local Muslims
Wow.
in Muzaffarabad if they were protecting anyone else.
Wow.
So, they sometimes they say perceptions can be a reality, and perceptions become reality if you keep repeating the same thing.
Right.
So what I'm going down to is that I'm an accidental author. I reached Muzaffarabad on the 15th day of my trip, of a 30-day trip. And I wanted to stand under that bridge where some of our ancestors were massacred. And I picked up the soil because I wanted to bring it down to my our two daughters, and give it to them in a bottle, that wherever you are in the global village now, just remember where your roots were, from where you came. But then, when I picked it up, the soil within, the voice within me actually said, why am I doing this? It asked me. And at that moment, I think I did the right thing. I left the soil and I just kind of walked up the bridge. I didn't spend more than half an hour in Muzaffarabad, to be honest.
Interesting.
I went all the way, and that's why you only find 5 pages. It probably was a closure I was looking for my father and
Right.
my bigger family. I didn't go anywhere else. I sat in the car and I came down. But I think I did the right thing, because in picking up that soil, probably what I will pass down to my next generation, because as they say, perception is reality. As perceptions keep developing over the next generations, they'll think some community massacred some other community, and there's a hatred that might develop. And I didn't want to pass that. So I walked away. I think they did the right thing, because by walking away, my mind was looking at something else. And as I kept going, Divine actually showed me all those places that I kept traveling to. In my first book, I went to 36 cities and villages in 30 days. And that, when I came back and I reflected, I said, good, I didn't get the soil, because what I've got is a repository of 5,000 to 6,000 pages, 6,000 pictures. And I've got beautiful stories of these structures and stories of humans who were associated with me. That's a better and a bigger story to tell than my story of 4 or 5 pages, which I've limited to out here. Right? I didn't want to make this a personal story, because a lot of people talk about personal stories, and the bigger cause gets lost.
Right.
So that's when I decided that a visual travelogue must be written, because when I was a kid and I started reading history and I started moving forward, I stumbled upon beautiful travelogues of Britishers who were coming into India from the in British India. They were coming into the Punjab, which was a separate country at that time, with secret missions to actually figure out what was the Punjab like, what was Ranjit Singh's kingdom like, what was the Sikh Kingdom like. They submitted the reports to the East India Company. That was a secret reports. I don't have a view to that. But what these guys did, guys like William Moorcroft, Alexander Burns, they wrote beautiful travelogues. And I think the British do this well. We as a community are stuck in Bhangra, right, as you said. But there's one of the spies, William Moorcroft, going back to the travelogues, and Alexander Burns, and a lot of these travelers came in, on spy missions. But they wrote their own personal travelogues. Now, British sent the William Moorcroft into Punjab, and he came in 1819 or 1820, somewhere around that. And Ranjit Singh gave him a place to stay for a few days in Lahore at that place, that air-conditioned place. And he did his spy mission. He went all the way to Kashmir, Leh, Ladakh, and he went back to India and he submitted his report. 1849, when the British take over Punjab, here's what they do, because they know how to honor the people. They put a plaque there on that place. There's no plaque there says that Ranjit Singh has made this. There's a plaque saying that William Moorcroft came here and was given a place to stay in Lahore Darbar. Who made that place doesn't matter. But who came and stayed there becomes the history. So we don't know how to actually preserve and tell stories and tell tales, right? And to me, these tales have not been told for 7 decades. I actually wonder why the Sikh community has not commissioned research, because the Sikh community has been staying outside of India since about 1870s. 1947 it happened. Technically, they were citizens of other countries.
So do you think that's a result of the British coming in and just enforcing their own history and kind of erasing, like that plaque, for example? Is that
I
a
don't
good
think it's
metaphor for
erasing.
what happened overall with
I don't think it's erasing. I think it's a smartness that, you know.
not erasing, but I guess modifying history, right?
It's not modifying. You cannot say that.
Man, I'm using all the wrong
you're not
words.
Saying, you're not saying. Yeah, you're using the wrong word because William Woodcroft did come there. It's not
Right.
a false statement. Question is, what do you prioritize? Let me give you another example.
Prioritize.
Yeah, the Durand Line, which is defining Pakistan and Afghanistan. Actually, that line was made by Ranjit Singh. His foreign minister Fakir Azazuddin, who was a Muslim, signed up a treaty with the Afghanistan, and that's what became the border in the Khyber region. But it's not known as Ranjit Singh line. It's not known as the Fakir Azazuddin line. It's known as Durand Line. Because Durand was a person who led a mission in late 1830s, and went via Sindh into Afghanistan, and led the first Afghan war, Anglo-Afghan war. In honor of that man who took that mission, the British, when they took over Punjab, called that line as the Durand Line.
So I mean, it was
So it's a history.
it's on purpose. Like it was certain things were prioritized on purpose to erase,
Absolutely. It's not to erase, but it's just
modify, prioritize.
They
Sorry.
prioritize. I mean, you've not chosen to write your own history, and you've not popularized
So
your
is
own
that
history.
necessarily our fault or like
It is. So when I say when you don't write and you don't acknowledge your own stuff, then people have the choice of doing whatever they want to, and then you have to accept it. Narratives have to be accepted. So I go back to these. Why has it taken 7 decades to document these 2 books? A remnant of our history in 126 cities and villages. In the 7 decades, so much of literature in Pakistan has come out, which is maligning Ranjit Singh's era, and I've tried to demystify a lot of things. We
like
have
what
not,
like what for an example?
well, things like in the first book, Jahangir's Mausoleum. So if you go to Jahangir's Mausoleum, there's a big board up there which is blatantly saying that Ranjit Singh stole the most valuable precious stones from here and put it in the Golden Temple. It's all bullshit, right? Ranjit Singh did not do that. Golden Temple's history is something totally different.
Right.
It's not made by stolen gems and from other mausoleums. But yet, we have not written our history. In 7 decades after the partition, if no one's writing it, you're giving a choice to someone else to do it. And I've tried to actually question all those things, and I've actually given documented evidence why this is a lie. So my point is that I'm filling a void by going into the country and documenting the remnants as they stand 7 decades after partition, tangible and intangible aspects. And by writing that, I'm feeling that we are too late because 70% of our heritage is wiped out, finished. 30% is left. Most of it is occupied. In the remotest of the areas, some of them are lying there and time is acting on it. Beautiful frescoes about to finish off. So I'm capturing it 7 decades after partition. What were we doing as a community for 7 decades? That's the question I'm asking.
Well,
We were
was
quiet.
it a result of the British coming in and then? I mean, that's such a painful part of our history that the people that did leave there, like you said, like there's the generation after, or the generation that was there isn't going to talk about it. The generation afterwards doesn't know anything because of the previous generation.
Not really.
and then-
That's where I was going down. Sikhs have been living in the Western worlds, in Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong since 1870s. Technically, they were not Indian citizens. So when 1947 happened, why couldn't these organizations commission research into Pakistan? If we today, by just doing these books in 3 years, I'm able to sit down on the table with the Pakistan government and have a talk about them because they're asking me, where is this monument?
Wow.
They ask me, where is that?
Yeah.
You can have a frank dialogue with them face to face with the Equity Trust Property Board in Lahore, and I'm doing that.
Yeah.
I was in February. The reason is because this is the foundation you've laid as a data on the table. So now people can now start gravitating towards, oh, it is there. What do we do? Should we maintain it? We didn't know about it. Because the employees that come into those departments, they come on a 3 or 4 year stint, right? First year, you're trying to learn the job.
Yeah.
Second year, you're trying to figure out what my priority is. Third year, planning to actually get transferred into somewhere else, right? You're not doing your job. But when the data is lying in front of you, you don't need to go to those places. You just have the data lying in front of you. In fact, the person who's responsible for the Sikh and Hindu sites, Imran Gondal, actually, I was speaking to him. He was in front of me telling his subordinate, plan a trip and let's go to that place. Let's go to this place in the next 1 month. So you can have a dialogue when the data lies there. If you become numb and you don't even look at it, you don't strike any dialogues. And everything change happens from a dialogue.
Right.
So point I was trying to say is that a community was sitting outside. They could have documented these many, many years back. The fact is, it's taken 7 decades to document it. Why is the question I'm raising. I spoke at the Chapman University just about 10 days back, and I'm telling you a comment of the dean of the Chapman University. So he heard me, and the other dean came and told me, a lady, she came and told me, he was saying that I don't get this. The academic institutions have been studying Borobudur, Angkor Wat, these sites of Buddhism, Islamic sites, and so on and so forth. 7 decades have passed by and there's no academic institutions trying to study these sites? Whom do you blame?
I don't know. Can you? I don't know.
I'm not blaming anyone, but I'm fortunate that God has selected me to undertake this mission. And in a short span of 3 years, we're leaving 1,000 pages, which today my community will not recognize. Today the world, I'm trying to bring about a change. I mean, I'm glad that, organizations like Library of Congress is giving me a space to talk about it. So I'm hoping it creates a ripple effect. My community is more interested in Bhangra. That's fine. There are a lot of people who are actually helping me. Small pockets of people are helping me. But where you should be passionately holding this and saying, this is my heritage. I need to bring it home. I need to understand this.
Right.
It's like in India, one of the Tribune newspaper asked me and as to my challenges, and I was open about this. I said, you know what? People in India will prefer to spend 4,000 rupees for a bottle of whiskey and not for a book. For them, a book is very expensive. But imagine the heritage that it is there and what it takes to document it. So I think there's a lot of mindset issue out here.
Yeah, definitely. I think even for someone like myself, like generations that grew up here, like when we go back, like I only know about up to my parents. Like when I went back to India, I only visited areas that my parents grew up. So I didn't know much about Pakistan. And like I was like, hey, can we go? And I don't even know if you guys aren't even allowed. I don't even know if my parents are allowed into Pakistan, or is that there's that whole immigration issue, the visa issue, So it's like there's so many barriers that are set up, make an excuse for there not being a lot of preservation of that history. But I mean, now that we are aware of it, now I'm aware of it. You know what I mean? So it's like we're always, even like you said, we're programmed to think certain things. Like you kids my generation, like when we think about heritage, we think language, we think Bhangra, we think, these are things that are tied. The songs about the kid and the tractors and things like that. Like that's what we think because that's what we're taught. So it's
do you think about Hiranja? Do you think about Sasi Punnu?
I mean, aside from the songs that I've heard, I don't.
You don't know. This is what happens when the lands are taken away.
Yeah.
Your culture, your stories, your values. These are not human stories. These are stories of soul, and because in a text, in a spiritual text, these stories are brought in.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is, lot gets conditioned, and you lose them when you lose your lands. Going into Pakistan is the least of the worries, I would say, because the barrier is in your mind. You got to first open the barrier of your mind.
Right.
I have gone and I faced a lot of challenges. I mean, these things are not easy. I mean, doing 2 books of 126 cities and villages and mapping it across in terms of remnants.
Of course, yeah.
It's not easy because all I say is that if it was easy, then like Taj Mahal, you have 10,000 books. Why is it that you only have this book for Sikh legacy in Pakistan? It's not easy.
Right.
But yet, who's asking you to go to 126 cities and villages in depth? You can still expose yourself to start an ABC primer kind of a thing. You can still go to places that are close by, Lahore, right? Rather than just going to the Gurdwaras and making an entire legacy appear like we're just a Gurdwara-centric religious group. We can't think beyond that, right? Anything is possible, provided your mind does not create the barrier. And I think the biggest issue is that a mind creates a barrier, and therefore we don't want to explore anything.
Well, this is why the work that you're doing, I think, is fascinating. And like even when thank God my internet went out that day and the Wi-Fi wasn't working, because then I can pick up this book and then actually be like, oh, there's actually your book written about this, because I've never seen a book like this ever. Like, to be quite honest, and I don't know anybody that has seen a book like this. And the only stories that I've heard about, my own history, I guess, has been from my parents or snippets from my grandfather. But like you said, there's more than Muzaffarabad, and there's so many people that I know that probably can trace their lineage back to Pakistan as well. And
so the only thing
what would you like to, besides obviously buying these books, which I advise everyone to do if you have a general interest in it. Where can they get these books, first of all?
Yeah, so the Lost Heritage, the Sikh Legacy in Pakistan, the ones which you got, can you just show it there? And this one, The Quest Continues, Lost Heritage, the Sikh Legacy in Pakistan.
Right.
Both these books, you can actually have a look at the website, which is lostheritagebook.com. You can go and have a look at that. Go into the testimonial sections and see all the kinds of credentials there about these works. But you can also get it from Amazon.com,
Great.
Amazon India,
Perfect.
Amazon Canada, Amazon UK. You can get it from there. So book availability is not an issue. I mean, it's a very heavy voluminous work.
Yeah.
So that people know it. These are not small books. These are 3 kgs each. So you're talking about a set of 6 kgs. But I think the people need to.
What else can they do besides, like, if somebody's like, okay, I want to get more into learning about this. Like, you obviously went into Pakistan, but like, let's say anybody from my generation is like, let me find out more about.
I think. Okay, let me try and answer.
Or try
that
to
question.
preserve.
Let me answer that question from a community's perspective. What should the community do? That includes individuals.
Sure.
Right? I see 3 steps inside this. And it's a very structured approach that I'm trying to approach it, because I've spent 3 years of my life trying to research, documenting, and now I'm actually spending, after first book, I spent about good 7 to 8 months traveling around the world. And with the second book now, we haven't been back home since November of 2017. We're just on the road. So by the time we reach back, it'll be November, right? So the point I'm trying to say is that these works should result in an education first. That's the step number 1. Because in 7 decades, when the memories have been wiped out, the generation is not even aware, and here you've got some insights, people need to educate themselves with that. Not just the community. I question whether when Amardeep can read the Egyptian legacy, the Roman legacy, then why shouldn't someone else read my legacy, the Sikh legacy in Pakistan? It's just a human story.
Right.
Why should it be suppressed? So I have spoken in many forums and many pluralistic secular forums and outside of the Sikh domain, and I've had the story resonating with the common men, and they've cried.
Wow.
So I think the first question from the community's perspective is, when will you own it? When will you start connecting with it? Because without education, you're talking up in the air.
Right.
You don't even know how to take the first step. So I think right now we've got a big problem. Educate yourself. Second is, what can we do with this heritage? Now there are 2 parts of it. The tangible and the intangible. And the tangible is what you can hold. Intangible is what you can't hold. The belief systems, the intangible, right? Let's start with the intangibles. When will you widen your horizon to start understanding what your forefathers were doing? I mean, in these books, the talks that I give, I'm trying to challenge a lot of our traditional thinking. We can't talk about all that aspects, but people who've heard me in the seminars that I'm giving around the world, I'm bringing what insights I've got from these monuments where I've stood them and tried to see, hey, today we have nothing left in Punjab, in East Punjab, which allows me to understand what my forefathers were doing. These monuments, though they are in a bad shape, they're lying yet, some of them in the remotest of the areas, and the frescoes, the artworks, the structures are telling me a story. And that story I have to interpret, and I've tried to interpret them in many ways. And that story tells us that my forefathers were far, far, far liberal, pluralistic, and their mindsets were all inclusive than we are today. We are divided.
How can you get that information purely based off a monument?
How will you get it from the frescoes? Today's mindset is you've wiped out the all frescoes, anything to study and understand what your forefathers' mindset was from East Punjab in the name of renovation.
Right.
In those areas, you will find frescoes of, say, let me tell you an example of Mangad Gurdwara. Outside walls have frescoes of all communities. The inner walls have frescoes of the Sikh gurus, and the center has only writings of the Granth Sahib. You might say this is the Hindu influence, this is the Islamic, because even Allah is written outside.
Wow.
The way I look at it is, my forefathers are saying all faiths are welcome. Gurus hold your hand from inside to take you to the center, sanctum, where the Granth Sahib is kept, where only the word matters.
Right.
It's a beautiful message. How do you study this? You look at a Udasi shrine, which was also part of the broader Nanak Panthi tradition. In an Udasi shrine in Dipalpur, you're talking about women's empowerment today? Well, I'm looking at a fresco. A woman is leading a hunt to catch a deer, and the man is chilling it behind with the falcon in his hand.
These are murals, or what are they? They're just
frescoes, murals, the drawings. You interpret and understand your forefathers' mindset from these, what they're writing. If you don't believe in it, in the temples you'll find Mughals and Muslims and Hindus and other things made. I mean, I'm looking at one of the frescoes. Today, we'll not even put that kind of fresco in our gurdwaras because he's not wearing a turban. But there's a beautiful traditional story in the Indian subcontinent about Shravan Kumar.
Right.
Have you heard of Shravan Kumar?
I have not.
Shravan Kumar is a person whose story was that his parents, when in the old age, could not walk. They said, son, we want to go for a pilgrimage. Now, they couldn't walk. So this Shravan Kumar, he puts the parents, mom and dad, on a basket, puts them on his shoulder and walks across India and takes them to places. It's a story about respect for parents. It's got nothing to do with a Hindu, Sikh or Muslim.
Wow.
That is there in the gurdwaras. Today, that cannot be put there because he's not wearing a turban or a beard. My forefathers were very, very pluralistic. And these remains about going back. So let's get back to the question that you posed. First is education. Second is looking at the intangible aspects. Intangible aspects is, and we go on to the tangible aspect. We're talking about that. These things that look and feel.
Well, just to touch on that, I think that's fascinating because I know people in my generation, we kind of, maybe as an act of kind of getting away from that very narrow way of thinking, or like this is what it is, or how we've been conditioned to think. We want to go back to thinking how maybe our forefathers did. So even me hearing about this is like fascinating to me because it's like, oh, I'm just going full circle back to the mindset that my forefathers had.
Absolutely.
And the fact that there's like documented evidence of this is like amazing because we're never taught this. Like, I don't know about this.
Today, to understand, let me make you a very powerful statement out here. Today, to understand your faith, Sikhism, you have to go into Pakistan and look at these remnants.
Right.
And I'm bringing it to you in your home in these books. Look at them.
Yeah.
Interpret these yourselves.
Right.
Don't take my conditioning.
Right.
Interpret for yourself what they're saying. So when you look at these murals and their architectural styles and so on and so forth, there are multiple strands inside this. And then you say, my forefathers were much, much great people than what we were because of faith of Sikhism started from all-inclusiveness.
Right.
Somewhere we are kind of missing that link. So that all-inclusiveness leads us to the intangible aspect that there are communities who were believers of Nanak, need not be the Khalsa tradition, but somewhere down the line in 1920s or so, we defined who a Sikh is, but when you define, you exclude the others.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
So when you define, you exclude the others, how do you then now embrace them? So I asked a very stupid question to one of the Nanak Panthis, the believers of Guru Nanak in Pakistan. He's the Granthi of the Gurdwara and he's not a Sikh in terms of a Singh or Kaur. His name is Bansri Lal. In India, you'll call him a Hindu. He doesn't wear a turban, but they don't go to a temple.
I think that's beautiful.
He goes to a Gurdwara and he's a Granthi. They do all the protocols like a Sikh Gurdwara does.
Amazing. Yeah.
And I asked him a stupid question and he gave me the right answer. The stupid question I asked him was, Bansri Lalji, please tell me in Pakistan, how many Hindus are still the believers of Guru Nanak?
Right.
And he turns around and he looks at me and he says, Amardeep, do you still don't consider us as Sikhs?
Wow. Interesting.
So this is the intangible aspect. To understand what your forefathers were doing, you have to go into Pakistan and listen to grasp these intangible stories. The tangible aspect, we are on the second part. We have talked about education. These understandings you have to embrace is the sub part A of the second step. Part B of the second step is, can we restore some of these places in their pristine form to convey the message to our next generation that this is what it was? Because I say we lost it there, we destroyed it here. In East Punjab, we've destroyed it ourselves. No one came and destroyed it for you. Our community has destroyed every footprint of the heritage out there. In Pakistan, the remnants are still there. They're in a bad shape, many of them in the remotest area, but yet they tell a lot of stuff. So I don't think you can save 100% because the community is not living. These are billions of dollars of assets. You cannot save everything. We need to become smart and ask, are there 1 or 2 monuments we can pick up and do it in a professional manner? Right now, a lot of our people from East Punjab are getting in and they're taking up contracts with Pakistan government. Pakistan government actually wants to help. They've restored about 24 plus historical gurdwaras and they want to help. But the question is the help going to be in the right direction by these people who are coming in taking the contracts? We need to create a movement from abroad, come together and say, you know what, we can't restore all our heritage. Let's accept the fact. But are there, from my books, there are 2 or 3 sites I've already pointed out. I think they are there which we can restore it. Pick it up and say, we are going to restore this in the way our forefathers made, because we want to give a message of plurality to the entire nations and entire world. And this heritage will become a kind of in the future, 100 years or 200 years from now, this is the only remnant that will be left which will tell what our forefathers used to think. Now, for this, it may not be through the Sikh community. Maybe we have to partner with a third party. So it's fine. Maybe we have to partner with Aga Khan Foundation and say, let's come together because it's about our collective cultures.
Right.
And we maintain one of those places or two of those places. So that's the second step. And then I think the question really that comes down to is the third step is where do we go beyond this? Because in 3 years, if there's 1,000 page of data that's coming into our laps now, is this the end? Do we need to do more work? With all due respect, as Chapman Dean said, I mean, why have we not looked at this legacy for 7 decades? I'm questioning where from here? Do we stop this work here? Our community has been setting up a lot of chairs in the Western world. And they're doing their work. With all due respect, they're doing good work. But do we need to keep turning translations of Japji Sahib again and again?
Right. And I also have a problem with those translations because I feel like they're very biblical.
Yeah.
They're very boring to read.
So someone may come there and
they're not like I read them and it's like scary. It's like thou shalt he. So it's like a person like me, I get turned away from that because it's like there's no
going forward,
connection for me here.
Going forward, there could be someone great in the university who might bring out a translation that connects to the modern mind and
I
the
love
language.
that.
That's fine, but it's just the same thing going round and round. And they're doing good work. I'm not saying that. Don't get me wrong.
But I think there could be a shift in focus for areas that are lacking.
The question that I'm raising is out of these chairs is we've got so much of millions of dollars invested into these chairs, right?
Yeah.
None of the chairs in 7 decades has said 80% of this community's heritage churned in these lands. Let me focus there. That's the only point I'm making. There's a space for all that they're doing.
Right.
But is there not one chair that said 80% of this community's history churned on those lands? There is something to be done there too. Let me focus there. Why does it take a non-academic person who's a finance industry person to come up and give up his career and go down this path? The question I'm asking is, will I be able to do more? Or will someone else be able to do more?
Right.
Will it stop at the Sikh legacy? Will I motivate or will I become the one who's going to document the Islamic legacy in East Punjab, which also got wiped out? Yeah. Will I be the one who will actually document the Hindu legacy or the Jain legacy, which got wiped out in in West Punjab? I don't know. But to do an Islamic or Hindu or a Jain legacy, I have to become in my mind a Muslim or a Hindu or a Jain, and I'm willing to do that in my mind.
Right.
But is it me or is it someone else? Or in the Sikh community, is there someone else who's going to say, Amardeep, you've done something, you've put a path forward to us, let me take it forward.
Thank you so much for coming on again. This has been an extremely enlightening conversation. Even for me, I mean, I think I've learned a lot and taken away a lot. On not just like looking at these things in a physical level, but more of like a deeper level and trying to kind of connect through my own history and my heritage, I guess you could say. I'm really saying thank you so much. This was great, and I'll put all the links down below.